Picture this. You're standing in a grocery store. You've got a decent job, you make good money, more than your parents ever did at your age. You grab a cart, work your way through the aisles, pick up the usual stuff. Nothing extravagant. Eggs, pasta, a rotisserie chicken, some olive oil. You get to the register. $112. You blink at the screen. You didn't even buy wine. Now here's where it gets strange. You're not broke. You're not struggling, not technically. You make six figures, $100,000 a year. That's supposed to mean something. That number used to mean something. In your parents' minds, it still does. But you're standing at a grocery store register, doing the quiet math in your head, wondering if maybe you should have put the olive oil back. That moment, that specific, silent, slightly humiliating moment is what this video's about. Because something has shifted, not just in prices, not just in the economy, something deeper, something structural, and nobody's really talking about it plainly. So let's do that. For decades, $100,000 a year was the cultural shorthand for made it. It was the salary that got referenced in movies, aspirational magazine spreads, motivational speeches. Hit six figures and you've arrived. That was the message. And for a long time, the math actually worked. In 1990, a household earning $100,000 was sitting in roughly the top 5% of American earners. That's not rich, that's wealthy. That's 2 vacations a year, save comfortably, afford a house in a nice neighborhood wealthy. Fast forward to 2025, $100,000 a year now puts you just barely above the median household income for a dual-income couple. You're not in the top 5% anymore. You're not even close. And in cities like San Francisco, New York, Boston, Seattle, Austin, increasingly even Nashville and Denver, $100,000 a year qualifies you for financial assistance programs. Read that again. 6 figures financial assistance programs. This isn't a fluke. It's not bad budgeting. It's not avocado toast. It's the result of a slow, complicated, and almost perfectly invisible process that's been running in the background for the last 30 years, and it's only recently started to feel real for people who always assumed they were on the right side of it. The uncomfortable truth is this: the definition of financial security has been quietly rewritten, and most people didn't get the memo until they were already living inside the new version. Let's go back to the beginning. Part 1. The number that meant everything. To understand why $100,000 feels different now, you have to understand what it meant then. In the early 1980s, the United States was coming out of a brutal inflationary period. Mortgage rates had hit 18%. Unemployment was climbing. The economy was in real pain, but wages, at least for a while, were keeping up. People could feel the pressure, but they also felt like the ladder was still there, like climbing was still possible. A $100,000 salary in 1983 had the purchasing power of roughly $320,000 today. $320,000! If you made $100,000 in 1983, you were genuinely rich. Not comfortable rich. Actual, undeniable country club membership, second home in the mountains, your kids go to private school and you don't think twice about it rich. The number didn't change. The world underneath it did. And this is the first mechanism worth understanding, the slow, quiet erosion called inflation. Not as an economic concept, as a lived experience. Inflation is not a single event. It's not a crash or a crisis. It's more like a tide. It comes in gradually, every single day, in every single transaction. A little more for coffee, a little more for rent, a little more for the car insurance you've had for 11 years without a single claim. And because it moves slowly, your brain adapts. You stop noticing the individual adjustments. But the math doesn't forget. From 2020 to 2024 alone, cumulative inflation in the United States ran at roughly 21% in 4 years. That's not normal. The previous 4-year period, about 8%. The period before that, 7%. In the span of one presidential term, the cost of being alive in America jumped by more than it had in the previous 8 years combined. And wages? Wages went up too, technically, but they followed, they didn't lead.
and they didn't follow equally. They went up faster for high earners, slower for everyone else. And in the specific categories that matter most, housing, healthcare, childcare, education, wages didn't just fail to keep pace, they lost the race badly.
When we talk about why $100,000 doesn't feel like enough, we're really talking about three walls. Three specific categories of spending that have become structurally unaffordable in a way that didn't used to be true. The first wall is housing. In 1984, the median home price in the United States was around $72,000. A household earning $50,000, half of our magic number, could afford a median home. The math worked. You'd put 15% down, get a fixed-rate mortgage, and your monthly payment would consume a reasonable slice of your income. In early 2025, the median home price in the United States is just under $430,000. The average 30-year mortgage rate has been hovering between 6 and 7%. Run those numbers. On a $430,000 home with a 20% down payment, your monthly mortgage payment is somewhere around $2,300, before property tax, before insurance, before the furnace breaks. The rule of thumb financial advisors have used for decades is that housing should consume no more than 30% of your gross income. On a $100,000 salary, 30% is $2,500 a month. So technically, in pure math, you can afford the median American home. But that's with nothing else going wrong. That's with no car payment, no student loans, no medical bills, no kids, no retirement contributions, no emergency fund, no savings at all. That's the version of your life that exists only in a spreadsheet built by someone who forgot to include the part where you actually live. And that's just the median. In major cities, the places where the jobs that pay $100,000 actually exist, the median home price isn't $430,000. It's $800,000. It's $1.1 million. It's $1.4 million. In San Jose, California, the median home price in 2025 is over $1.4 million. A software engineer making $130,000 a year in San Jose is house poor before they even think about buying. They're paying $3,000 a month in rent, commuting 45 minutes each way, and wondering where it all goes. The second wall is childcare. This one hits differently because it's invisible until you need it. The average annual cost of full-time infant care in the United States is now over $20,000 in most states. In major metro areas, that number frequently exceeds $30,000. In parts of California and New York, it can approach $40,000 for a single child. For context, that is more than the average cost of in-state college tuition, including fees. For a household earning $100,000 combined, paying $25,000 a year in childcare means losing one full quarter of their pre-tax income before they pay rent, food, utilities, transportation, healthcare, or anything else. And this is widely considered normal now. This is the current reality that parents just quietly absorb, often by having one partner leave the workforce entirely, which then creates a different problem, which is a single-income household trying to survive on one salary in an economy built for two. The third wall is healthcare. The average employer-sponsored family health insurance premium in the United States in 2024 was $25,572 per year. The employee typically pays about $6,500 of that. Add average out-of-pocket costs, deductibles, co-pays, prescriptions, the real annual healthcare burden for a middle-class family is closer to $10,000 to $14,000 per year, even with employer coverage. That's a car payment every month for the privilege of not going bankrupt if someone gets sick. Now, stack those three walls together: mortgage or rent, childcare, healthcare. In a major metro area for a family of four, you're looking at somewhere between $70,000 and $90,000 in fixed, non-negotiable, unavoidable baseline costs every year, after tax. $100,000 of income after federal and state taxes is roughly $70,000 to $75,000 depending on where you live. Do you see it now? The walls are taller than the salary. That is what has changed. That is what nobody says at the dinner table because saying it out loud feels like admitting failure. It feels like personal inadequacy. But it isn't. It's arithmetic. Part 3. The invisible taxes. Here's something the inflation conversation usually misses.
When people talk about money losing value, they're talking about prices. Coffee costs more, groceries cost more, fine. But there's a second layer of erosion that's less visible and arguably more damaging, what economists sometimes call shrinkflation of life quality. This is the idea that even when prices stay the same, what you're getting quietly gets worse. The flight you used to book in economy got less legroom. The car you bought has fewer standard features. The internet plan costs the same, but they throttled speeds during peak hours. The health insurance deductible doubled. The gym shrunk the towels and stopped stocking the good shampoo. Your salary stayed flat, but the life it buys, quietly, methodically, almost imperceptibly, got smaller. And then there's the fee economy. This one deserves a full documentary on its own. The modern American financial system has become extraordinary at extracting money through layers of invisible charges that didn't exist 30 years ago. Overdraft fees, subscription creep, platform fees, service charges, resort fees on hotel rooms that have no resort, convenience fees for paying online, processing fees, the $3.50 charge to use an ATM that isn't your bank's ATM, charged by your bank for using a different bank's ATM, dynamic pricing, surge pricing, the airline fee to pick your seat, the fee to check a bag, the fee to bring a carry-on, the fee to board early, the fee to get a refund on the fee. Each one is small. Each one is individually defensible. Together, they add up to a form of taxation that doesn't appear in any government budget, doesn't get voted on, and doesn't come with a receipt that shows you the total annual impact on your life. A 2023 study estimated that the average American household spends between $5,000 and $8,000 per year in fees, subscriptions, and microcharges they either didn't notice, forgot about, or felt they couldn't avoid. That's real money. That's a vacation. That's 3 months of groceries. That's sitting silent inside a system designed to be frictionless enough that you never quite feel it leaving.
Part 4. The comparison trap. Now here's the part that really messes with people's heads. You know you're not rich. You feel it every month when you look at your bank account. But you also don't feel poor. And that cognitive dissonance, that gap between what the number says and what the experience is actively weaponized against you. Social media didn't invent comparison, but it industrialized it. Every platform algorithmically surfaces the most extreme, aspirational version of a life you're not living. The person with the better apartment, the couple whose kids are in nicer clothes, the guy your age who is somehow buying a second property. And because you don't see their debt, their family money, their 2 income sources, their financial stress, you just see the output. And the output looks like they figured something out that you missed. This creates a specific psychological trap. You make good money, but you feel behind. You feel like the problem must be your choices, your discipline, your mindset. If you just optimized a little more, cut a little more, hustled a little more, maybe then the math would work. But the math is broken, not just for you, for almost everyone at your income level. Here's a number that crystallizes this. In 1971, a single-income household earning the equivalent of today's median wage could cover all essential expenses, housing, food, transportation, healthcare, and still save money. Today, a dual-income household earning the median household income in most major American cities cannot cover those same essential expenses and save money simultaneously. Both people are working, neither is saving. This isn't a discipline problem. This isn't a generation problem. This is a structural problem. The economy has been quietly reorganized in a way that captures an increasing share of middle-class income before that income can become wealth. And the people most affected are precisely the ones who were told they wouldn't be. The educated, employed, 6-figure earners who did everything they were supposed to do. Part 5. Where did the money actually go? So, if wages went up, and they did in nominal terms, and the economy grew, and it did, where did the money go? This is the uncomfortable part. Between 1979 and 2022, the productivity of the American worker increased by roughly 61%.
In simple terms, the average American worker is now producing 61% more economic value per hour than they were in 1979. Wages for the bottom 80% of earners grew by about 17% over that same period, adjusted for inflation. 17% for 61% more output. The gap between what workers produce and what they're paid, economists call this the productivity pay gap, has widened into something that is genuinely staggering when you look at it directly. That gap represents real money, trillions of dollars in aggregate value that was generated by workers and flowed somewhere else. Where? Toward capital, toward ownership, toward the top. Between 1979 and 2019, the wages of the top 1% grew by 160%, the top 0.1% by 345%. This isn't about hating the wealthy, it's about understanding a mechanism. The economy grew, it's just that the growth was distributed in a way that systematically widened the gap between asset owners and wage earners. And the class of people most likely to feel that gap most acutely is precisely the educated professional middle class, the people who earn well but own very little, who work hard but haven't accumulated wealth, who make $100,000 a year and still can't figure out how to get ahead. The cruelest irony is that the very assets that drive wealth, homes, stocks, investment property, appreciated faster than the wages needed to acquire them. The ladder kept moving upward, and every year you spent climbing, the bottom rungs got a little higher off the ground. Part 6. The cities that broke the contract. There's a geographic dimension to this that doesn't get nearly enough attention. The jobs that pay $100,000, that actually pay it reliably in high-density sectors like tech, finance, law, healthcare administration, marketing, consulting, those jobs are disproportionately concentrated in a small number of metro areas: New York, San Francisco, Seattle, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, Denver, Miami. These cities are also, not coincidentally, the most expensive places to live in the country. This is not a coincidence, it is a trap. The economy built the highest-paying jobs in the places where those salaries are most thoroughly neutralized by the cost of being there. And it did this over decades, slowly enough that people moved, settled, built lives, had kids, and by the time they fully understood the math, they were too embedded to leave. The obvious rebuttal is move somewhere cheaper, and some people do. But move somewhere cheaper comes with its own costs: a lower salary, a disrupted career, distance from family, school transitions for kids, the pure logistical cost of uprooting a life. And increasingly, the cheaper cities are becoming the expensive cities. The people who fled San Francisco to Austin made Austin into a place other people are now fleeing from. There is no clean escape hatch. The pressure moves with you. And the cities themselves are caught in a feedback loop. High-paying workers move in, demand for housing rises, prices rise. Workers who were already there get pushed out to longer commutes. Services become more expensive. The city becomes a place where people with good salaries feel financially squeezed, and people with lower salaries feel financially crushed. And the answer to both is you should probably earn more. But more how? And more enough to actually change the math. Zoom out. The bigger picture. Here's the honest implication of everything we've just walked through. The American financial middle class, the broad, aspirational, upwardly mobile middle class that defined the post-war social contract, is being systematically squeezed out of existence. Not through poverty, through inflation-adjusted irrelevance. The lifestyle that $100,000 a year was supposed to purchase, the house, the kids in decent schools, the occasional vacation, the retirement account growing quietly in the background, the feeling of being on solid ground, that lifestyle now costs significantly more than $100,000 in most of the places where people actually live and work. And that creates something more destabilizing than poverty. It creates a class of people who, by every external metric, look fine. They have the jobs, the titles, the salaries. They aren't asking for help. They're buying groceries and going to work and answering emails and planning for a retirement they're quietly terrified won't happen.
And because they don't look like they need help, they don't get talked about. The political conversation skips over them, too rich to be sympathetic, too squeezed to be comfortable. They exist in a middle space that the system doesn't have great language for. Meanwhile, the assets that generate wealth, real estate, equities, private businesses, continue to appreciate faster than wages. The gap between those who own assets and those who earn salaries widens. The six-figure salary feels more like a ceiling than a floor. And the people who grew up watching their parents live well on less, who were told that if they got the degree and got the job and made the money, the rest would follow, are discovering that the rest didn't follow. That the formula was real, but the variables changed while nobody was looking. This isn't a partisan point. This isn't a left versus right argument. It is a mathematical observation about how the economy has been reorganized over decades in ways that make wage income, even high-wage income, a progressively weaker engine of financial security. So what do you do with all of this? Earn more? Spend less? Leave the city? Buy assets? Start a side hustle? Optimize? Grind? Maybe. Some of that probably helps. Some of it helps at the margins. But none of it changes the underlying architecture. Because the uncomfortable truth that this whole conversation keeps circling back to is this: the system isn't malfunctioning. It's functioning exactly as designed. It's just that the design optimizes for something other than what most people were told it optimizes for. You were told it optimizes for hard work rewarded, for merit compensated, for people who do the right things ending up in the right place. And maybe it used to. Or maybe that was always partially a story we told ourselves. What the system actually optimizes for, when you look at the output, is the compounding of existing advantage. The accumulation of assets begets more assets. The ownership of capital begets more capital. The wages of labor, however high, beget a comfortable life, until they don't. There's a moment that a lot of people hit, usually somewhere in their mid-30s. They're making more money than they ever imagined they would, more than their parents, more than their younger self would have believed. And they sit down with their bank account, or their credit card statement, or their retirement balance, and they feel this quiet, creeping, impossible to articulate feeling. It's not panic, it's not despair, it's something subtler. It's the dawning suspicion that they're on a treadmill that's been slowly speeding up for years, and that they've been running harder to stay in the same place, and that somewhere along the way, without ever making a wrong move, without ever going off script, they ended up exactly where they were afraid they'd be. Comfortable enough to keep going, not secure enough to stop worrying. $100,000 a year. It used to be a destination. Now, it's just a speed. And the question, the one nobody has a clean answer to, is whether the treadmill can be slowed down, or whether the only real option is to find a way to own the machine.